Welcome, traveler. Tonight's tale comes not from the green hills of elves, but from the stone-deep halls of dwarves, where pride is a blade and shame echoes louder than axes. This is the story of Kundrîn Stoneveil, a thief, a liar, and perhaps a broken dwarf with one last chance to make it right. The hammer he stole was real, so was the curse, and to lift it, he must return what was lost through shadow, beast, and bitter snow. Breathe slowly now. Let the mountain air take you. The stone remembers. Snow fell on the stone steps of Erebor, not the soft kind that drifts gently from gray skies. This snow was dry, wind-whipped, biting, the kind that cuts at the skin and scours stone clean. It spun in angry gusts around the gate towers of the lonely mountain, hissing like ash in a furnace. Kundrîn Stoneveil stood in chains beneath it. The great hall doors loomed behind him, carved deep with fire runes and the ancient crests of Durin's line. Their golden inlays caught what little sun remained, casting long shadows down the stair. Dwarves lined both sides, guards in scaled armor, priests of Mahal in silent witness, common folk staring with narrowed eyes. No one spoke, no one needed to. He had stolen from the mountain's vault, and now there would be reckoning. The doors creaked open behind him. A cold voice rang out like a hammer on anvil. Bring him forth. Kundrîn flinched. His boots dragged slightly as the guards pushed him forward. He held his head high, jaw tight beneath his braided beard, eyes locked straight ahead. Shame was a heavy cloak, and today he wore it well. They led him into the throne hall of Erebor, massive. Pillars rose like mountain legs into the black above. Braziers glowed low, casting flickering light across runes etched in gold and obsidian. The Arkenstone glittered far above, nestled in its high perch, untouched. On the black stone throne at the far end sat Thrain III, king under the mountain. His beard was silver-bound, his crown jagged like iron teeth. One hand rested on the pommel of a ceremonial axe. His eyes, sharp and sunken, glinted not with rage, but with something colder. Disgust, Kundrîn was thrown to his knees. A silence passed. Then Thrain spoke. You entered the vault of Targazûn. Kundrîn's voice rasped, dry from some days without water. Yes. You stole the hammer, and you lost it before you could leave. Kundrîn said nothing. A sneer crept into the king's voice. A thief who cannot even keep what he steals. What shameful tale will you speak to me now? I was betrayed, Kundrîn said. It was taken from me. I had it. I swear you swore already when you took the oath of the Forge Hall, when you knelt before your killed father and the mountain. That oath meant nothing to you. I meant to bring it back. Kundrîn's voice cracked. I was going to. Thrain slammed the butt of his axe to the stone. The hall echoed. You are going to shame us, to parade a relic of the ancients into the black market like a coin purse. I was trying to prove myself. To whom? Thrain spat. You are nothing. Not a smith. Not a son. Not even a dwarf. The silence that followed was thicker than stone. Then Thrain leaned forward and his voice lowered. We had other plans for that hammer, and now, thanks to you, we must call on powers we would rather leave buried. At this, murmurs rose from the priests behind him. Concerned, sharp. Your punishment, Thrain continued, will not be exile. That is too merciful. He gestured. From the shadows, a stone brazier was rolled forth. It was carved with dark script, filled with black flame that shimmered violet blue. A dwarven runesmith stood beside it, robes lined with iron thread. Kundrîn's breath caught. No, the curse flame was forbidden, crafted in the deep days of Moria, meant to bind oath breakers, traitors, those who had traded stone-forged honor for something less. I was trying to bring it back, he whispered again. You have to believe me. I believe only what I see, said Thrain, and I see a thief. He raised his hand. Brand him. Kundrîn screamed. The flames didn't burn as fire does. They wrote themselves across his skin. Red gold letters. Runes that bent and twisted like snakes. They climbed his chest, his arms, his throat. They coiled around his eyes, down his spine, beneath his beard. Pain bloomed, not just through flesh. Through memory, he saw the moment it had been taken. A hooded figure, a flash of steel, a breath of air as the hammer left his hands, and then nothing. When the light faded, he lay gasping on the stone floor, body shaking. The curse runes glowed faintly along his skin. Thrain stepped down from his throne. The flame will mark you until the hammer is returned. If it is not, you will die with it. The guards dragged him up, cast him to the wind. They marched him out of Erebor that same evening. No trial, no last rites, only a cold wind and the long road north. They unshackled him at the edge of the gray mountains, left a water skin, a knife, no coin, and no words. He turned once. Far in the distance, Erebor stood like a memory too stubborn to forget. Its hall swallowed him once, and now it had spat him out. The wind howled across the snow line. Kundrîn wrapped his cloak tighter. Each breath was a struggle. His bones ached. The curse had burned itself into his sinew. He collapsed beside a frozen tree stump, panting. In the distance, the mountain stars began to show, and as he looked up, he saw it again. The shape, the hammer, outlined in starlight, calling to him. He whispered into the wind, Baragzûn, the name that had come to him in fever dreams. He clenched his teeth and rose. The wind was cruel in the gray mountains. For 3 days, Kundrîn marched beneath its weight. His boots cracked ice. His breath steamed like a dying forge. Each step dragged heavier than the last. Not from snow, from the curse. The runes burned hotter the further he went. He had bound them in leather, but it was no use. The fire inside was not a blaze. It was a hunger. The curse fed on distance from the hammer. He knew it without needing to be told. The moment his path curved east toward the iron hills, the glow along his forearms dimmed. The pulse behind his ribs eased. The grip of the fire slackened just enough to breathe. It wanted to be returned, not avenged, not worshipped, returned. On the fourth morning, Kundrîn found a cave, shallow, barely more than a hollow in broken stone, but it gave him cover. He built a fire from frozen moss and brittle bark. His hands shook as he lit it. His fingers were not numb from cold. They trembled with forgetfulness. The curse had begun eating at his memory. At first, it was small, a word lost, a name fading, the sound of home-forged iron falling from his thoughts. The flame did not just burn the body, it hollowed the mind. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a scrap of old parchment, one of the few things he had left. He scratched a word onto it in charcoal. Baragzûn. He stared at it. A name. He did not know if it was real. He only knew it came to him in dreams, in fever, in flashes, the dwarf who stole from the thief, and the trail pulled him south to the Iron Hills. By dusk, he reached the trade road. It curved like a cracked spine along the base of the mountains. Smoke rose from chimneys set into the cliffs. Lanterns swayed outside stone taverns. Dwarves passed without looking up. These were not the kings and jewelsmiths of Erebor. These were miners, traders, smugglers, the kind of dwarves who knew where a relic might vanish, the kind who would talk for a price. He kept his hood low. The runes had faded since morning, still visible beneath his collar. He dared not show them. Even here, exiles like him were not safe. The tavern was carved into the stone. No sign, just the smell of burnt meat and spilled ale. Inside, it was loud. Tankards slammed against oak, boots on stone. A lute player strumming out a rhythm no one listened to. Kundrîn kept to the edges, one hand on the hilt of his knife. He approached the bar. The barkeep was thick-armed, round-faced, and polishing a mug that looked older than he was. "I'm looking for a name," Kundrîn said. The barkeep didn't look up. "Aren't we all?" Baragzûn, that got a glance. "Too late," the barkeep said. "You missed him." Kundrîn leaned closer. "Then you saw him." Big one. Carried too much for someone traveling alone. Paid in coins too old to be legal. Looked like a dwarf who didn't want to be asked about his bags. Where back road leads to the old tunnel pass. You used to be for ore. Now it's for things that aren't declared. And if I follow, you'll find stone wolves, collapses, maybe worse. But if you're chasing him, I am, then drink while you still can. Kundrîn didn't drink. He left at midnight, slipping through a cracked arch behind the forge. Stalls. The air grew colder, the walls closer. This was a place where light did not belong. The tunnels beneath the iron hills were twisted. They had once carried carts full of iron. Now they carried nothing, just wind, rats, and whispers. He marked the walls as he moved. 3 scratches. Old miner's sign. It helped him remember which way he had come. Helped when the curse blurred the path behind him. The deeper he went, the more the air changed. It stank of wet fur and iron. Stone wolves. He stopped. Listened. Pads on gravel. 2 sets. Breathing. He crouched low, slipping into a narrow side crevice. Torch low. Knife ready. The first one appeared without sound. Large. Shaggy. Its eyes glowed with that strange cave light. Not flame. Not moon. Just hunger. The second flanked him. Kundrîn didn't hesitate. He stepped forward fast, slamming the hilt of his blade against the first wolf's jaw. It howled, staggered. The second lunged, the curse flared. He felt it pulse in his ribs. Heat rose through his arms. Not fire, pressure. He turned and struck the wolf with an open palm. It howled and skidded back, smoking from the snout. Not burned, just broken. The air between them had cracked. He dropped to one knee. The cost was worse this time. Sweat beaded at his brow. His hands trembled. The fire within had not finished taking its price. The wolves fled into the dark. He waited, breathing shallow. In the silence that followed, he saw it, just beyond the torchlight, something half buried in the dust, a shard of lacquered stone. He picked it up, smooth edge, one burnt corner, and carved into its center a dwarven letter. He closed his fist around it. He was close. Baragzûn had passed this way. Kundrîn climbed into a hidden hollow above the path and wrapped himself in his cloak. His limbs ached. His vision swam. The dreams came again. A hammer held high. A face behind a hood. A voice that whispered from a place too far to remember. He whispered back. I'm coming. The fire in his chest pulsed once, warm as coals beneath ash. He did not sleep well, but he did not stop. The road bent into the bones of the mountains. Kundrîn followed it without speaking, without breath to waste. The air was colder now, sharper. Valleys of dead pine trees stretched out below him, each one snapped or leaning like forgotten graves. Snow drifted sideways, clinging to the cliffs in sheets. Far ahead, rising above the broken ridge lines, stood Mount Gundabad, once sacred, now fallen. No dwarves had lived there in generations. Orcs had claimed it. hands dug tunnels like maggots. Beneath its teeth, no map was accurate, no tale kind, but he did not seek Gundabad itself. He sought the ruin near its eastern flank, a forgotten dwarven outpost once built as a sentry tower, now buried in snow and silence, the watch of Khazad-dûm. Smugglers still whispered about it. Traders from the Iron Hills said relics had passed through. Relics bound for black markets and deeper darkness. Kundrîn's curse had grown more restless the closer he came. The runes under his wrappings pulsed faintly now, each beat like a hammer on the inside of his ribs. He was getting closer, not to Baragzûn, to the hammer, or some part of it. By the second night, he reached the foot of a narrow, jagged pass. Wind screamed through it like steam through a cracked vent. The climb was near vertical. He used his staff for balance. His boots found purchase between frost-covered stone teeth. At the top, cut into the cliffside, crouched the tower. The watch was smaller than he expected, wide at the base, built into the mountain, its upper levels broken, its battlements shattered. Snow drifted across its entryway like a slow burial. These doors were torn off, the old bronze hinges rusted green. Kundrîn lit his torch with flint and stepped inside. The darkness was thick, not just absence of light. It felt like something that wanted to press inward, to push him out. The air was wrong, dry, but with a sharp edge, old blood and mold. He passed through what had once been a guard hall. Racks of rotted weapons leaned against stone benches. Bones littered the corners, small ones, not dwarven, goblin. He moved slower. He saw tracks in the dust, not recent, but not ancient either. Thin, three-toed, clawed. Goblin, still here. The upper stairs spiraled into the dark. As he climbed, he passed old banners, torn beyond recognition. At one turn, he paused and pressed his palm to the wall. It was warm, the curse responded, a low throb, like a heartbeat waiting beneath the stone. He climbed faster. The top floor had no ceiling. What had once been a roof was now open to the sky. A jagged circles framed stars half hidden by clouds. Snow had drifted in and settled along the edges of the room. Wind moaned through the broken pillars. He saw signs of passage, boot prints, a shattered crate, burned parchment, and half buried under snow near a broken brazier, a slate tablet carved in old dwarvish script. He brushed it clean. Seal was shaped like a hammerhead, the carving shallow, but deliberate. Shabi, passed with burden, traded south vault marks burned. Do not follow unless you hold fire. Kundrîn read it 3 times. The hammer had been here. Baragzûn had passed through, but he had not kept it. He had traded it south. To whom and for what, the stone did not say. Hold fire, the phrase echoed. Was it a warning, a passphrase, or something else? The runes on his arm pulsed once, brighter than before. He crouched to pocket the slate and heard it. A click, not of stone, a footstep. He turned, silent. Shadows moved near the stair. A goblin emerged, tall for its kind, hunched, clutching a chain of bones in one hand. Its eyes glowed orange. Its teeth clicked. It sniffed the air. It did not see him at first. Then another followed it. Then a third. They saw the torch, saw the dwarf. Their grins widened. Burning blood, one hissed. Stolen fire, rasped another. They drew weapons. One a hooked blade, another a jagged spearhead strapped to a stick. Kundrîn rose slowly. He said nothing. He did not run. He reached for the fire beneath the curse. The goblins lunged. He moved. The staff came up. He cracked the first goblin across the face, pivoted, and drove his shoulder into the second. The third caught his leg with a blade. He stumbled, growled, and slammed his palm into the floor. The runes exploded with light, not flame. Force. The air around him buckled. A shockwave of heatless power blasted outward. The goblin screamed, flung backward into the walls. One slumped and did not rise. The others hissed and fled. Kundrîn dropped to his knee. The runes flickered. His chest burned. He coughed and held the staff for balance. Somewhere below, deeper in the tower, something stirred. The bell near the stair rattled. Faint, but real. He did not wait. He staggered to his feet, stumbled to the stair, and descended as fast as his limbs would allow. The wind outside cut across his face like ice, but it was clean. No whispers, no claws. He did not stop until the tower was 2 ridge lines behind him. That night he camped beneath a bent pine tree, hidden by snow and shadow. He unrolled the slate. He read it again. Traded south. Vault marks burned. Do not follow unless you hold fire. He touched the runes along his arm. They pulsed gently. He whispered a single word. Dol Guldur and the wind, for once, answered, not with sound, but with silence. The trees grew stranger as he entered Mirkwood. It was not the forest itself that turned Kundrîn's stomach. It was the air, thick and slow, as if time dragged heavier here. Even the wind moved reluctantly through the twisted boughs, brushing branches with a sound like old leather and sighing ropes. No bird calls, no animal cry, only the creak of limbs and the wet suck of his boots in the moss-laced soil. The curse runes along his arms began to itch, not in pain, in warning. The trail that had led from Gundabad had been jagged and uncertain, full of half-truths. Whispers from caravan men and quiet forge masters. A half-drunk relic runner had said Baragzûn passed through the forest with a map and a pack. too heavy for one dwarf to carry alone. That was enough. Kundrîn had followed, guided more by instinct than evidence, but the further he walked, the clearer it became. The hammer had passed through this place, and it had not passed quietly. He moved carefully through the brush, torch low, steps placed between twisted roots. The deeper he went, the thicker the webs became. At first, they clung only to branches, old and sun-bleached. Then they crossed the path. Then they glistened fresh. He pressed on. The curse flared without sound. A pulse under the ribs. His fingers shook as he tightened the wrappings around his forearms. The runes wanted to react, to burn, but he held them back. No light yet, no fire unless forced. It was a scent that warned him first. Rot, wet silk, something sweet gone sour. Then came the remains. Web-wrapped bundles hanging from tree limbs like swollen fruit, some small, others the size of wolves. One larger still, torn open and left to drip into the underbrush. He moved faster now, but not carelessly. He was being watched. The first spider dropped without a sound. Only the sudden thump behind him gave it away. He turned and struck before seeing. His staff caught one leg. The thing hissed and staggered. Another dropped to his left. Another behind. Too many. He backed toward the trunk of a thick tree and kept the fire locked in his gut. He gritted his teeth. Not yet. The closest spider lunged. Mandibles clacking, hairy, limbs striking like blades. Kundrîn rolled aside, came up swinging, cracked it across the head. The second grabbed his cloak. He twisted, stabbed with a short iron blade, but it bounced off the carapace. The third came in fast. Too fast, it struck his side and knocked him to the ground. Pain seared up his ribs. Enough, the curse runes lit. The air around him twisted with heatless flame. His skin glowed red beneath the wrappings. He shouted a word, not a spell, a memory. The spiders shrieked and pulled back. He stood, blood in his mouth, and slammed his fist into the ground. A ring of light burst outward, like the beat of a forge bell. Two spiders fled. One collapsed in place, twitching, legs curling inward. He staggered. His vision swam. The cost had been higher this time. The forest held its breath. Then, from the shadows above, something stirred. A shape descended, not as large as the beasts of old, but older than the others, scarred, wise. It did not rush. It circled. Its eyes burned green. Kundrîn did not move. The spider spoke. Its voice was like bone against silk. You carry cursed fire. He stayed silent. You are not like the others. The forest speaks of your wound. The rune-fire hissed beneath his skin. What do you want here? Dwarf Kundrîn spat blood and answered. A hammer stolen from the mountain. Passed through your trees. There was a pause. a ripple of web behind the spider. Many things pass. Not all survive. Did Baragzûn come this way? Yes. Carried something bright. Stank of broken oaths. Where did he go? He made a trade, left a corpse, took a map. Where to the south? To the ruins. The stone with no name, buried in roots and shadow. Dol Guldur. The name stung his tongue. The spider shivered. You are brave to speak it. Foolish too. Tell me what he traded. Silence. Kundrîn stepped forward. The runes on his arms flared. The spider reared back. Tell me, he gave flesh. Not his. Others. In return, he was given passage. How long ago? Not long, not far. Where did he leave the map? The spider did not speak. He raised his hand. The light burned brighter. The spider hissed. Under the birch at the fork stone, beneath the roots, Kundrîn stepped back. And the spider vanished into the dark. He did not rest. He limped toward the fork stone, found the birch, half dead and web-wrapped. Dug with bare hands beneath the roots, wrapped in oilcloth, was a shard of parchment old, marked with mountain symbols. A route to Dol Guldur marked with a black sigil and a red X. The hammer had gone there, and so would he. The hill rose like a scar in the forest. Black trees circled it in rings, as if something had pushed them back long ago, and they had never dared return. The air was wrong, still and heavy, like breath held too long. Dol Guldur. Kundrîn crept through the underbrush, every footstep soft, every breath measured. Even the birds avoided this place. The spiders had spoken in half-truths, but their fear was real. The fortress had fallen centuries ago. Sauron had fled. The necromancers gone. Yet no root had dared reclaim its foundations. No moss crept over its stone. The rot here was not natural. It was waiting. He made no fire. His torch would give him away. The rune light beneath his wrappings was faint, almost still. The curse was holding itself low now, like a wolf crouched before a fight. He crossed the clearing and climbed a ridge of broken stone that once might have been a watchtower. From there he saw the outer wall, shattered. Vines curled over it like claws, not growth. He moved along its edge, searching for a way in. The map was marked. A hidden passage, a tunnel beneath the southern slope. He found it just before dusk, a half-buried archway in the roots of an old oak. The stones around it had been melted once, long ago. The passage yawned downward, cold, silent. He stepped inside. The dark swallowed him whole. He moved slowly, torch unlit, one hand on the wall. The stone was dry, not dusty, as if no time passed here. The deeper he went, the more he felt it. A presence, not watching, remembering. These walls had held whispers for too long. At a turn in the tunnel, he passed carvings half buried in soot. Old Elvish, burned and defaced, overwritten by clawed dwarven glyphs. then scratched out again. He pressed forward. He passed alcoves filled with rusted tools, broken bones, no signs of orcs. This place had been abandoned long before they were born, and then, at the base of a long spiral stair, he found the chamber. It was shaped like a vault, round, ceilings low. A central platform held a stone pedestal, half collapsed, and behind it, against the far wall, the remains of a body, wrapped in old mail. The sigil on the chest was a broken hammer. Baragzûn. Kundrîn crossed the room slowly. The body had been torn open, not by blade, by claws. The ribs were cracked outward, as if something had tried to pull free. The arms were gone, but the belt remained, and in the pouch hanging at his sides was a sliver of silver metal, a fragment. Kundrîn picked it up. It was the same metal as the hammer. The curse flared, bright, fierce. His breath caught, his knees buckled, the runes across his arms ignited. Fire raced along his bones, his vision blurred. He saw it, the hammer, being dragged, carried, lifted, not by Baragzûn, by another, a figure wrapped in robes, not dwarf, too tall, pale hands, eyes like coal. Mirkwood. The name seared into his mind, a relic broker, half-orc, known only by whispers in the trading pits, collector of cursed things, a trafficker in dwarven shame. The vision faded. Kundrîn gasped and dropped the fragment. He knelt there for a long time, so it had never reached Khazad-dûm. Not with Baragzûn. He had traded it here for safety, and now the hammer was in darker hands. Mirkwood. Somewhere beyond these walls, somewhere deeper still. Kundrîn took the fragment, wrapped it in cloth, placed it near his chest. The runes dimmed slightly. The pain eased. Even a piece of the hammer gave the curse something to hold. He stood and turned to leave, but something moved at the arch. A whisper, not a voice. A presence. He stepped back and raised his staff. A shape flickered in the dark. Not alive. A wraith echo, bound to the chamber, shaped from fear and memory. It hovered near the ceiling, robes torn, face hollow. He did not breathe. The echo drifted, then turned away. Gone. Kundrîn didn't stop again. He left the ruins before dawn. Behind him, Dol Guldur faded into mist. Ahead, the map pointed west, toward Khazad-dûm, toward Mirkwood. The hammer was no longer hidden. It was owned, and its price had never been higher. Khazad-dûm, even to speak, the name felt like a trespass. Kundrîn stood at the crumbling edge of the broken gate, where once the great bridge crossed to the western door. Now it lay collapsed, swallowed by the chasm. The wind that rose from below was warm and wet, like breath through a wound. He had crossed from the southern slopes of the misty mountains, following narrow hunters' paths and dead watch points, all carved before time was written. There had been no welcome, no warmth, only snow and the unyielding pull of the curse. The fire beneath his skin had grown quiet here, not calm, coiled, as if it too remembered the halls it once swore to. He found the path he needed 2 levels beneath the gate, a split in the wall where ancient smugglers had opened a crawl tunnel. Dust choked the stone. Cobwebs thicker than his palm hung like banners. He slipped inside. The dark swallowed him. No light, only memory. The red tunnels were not named for blood. They earned it from the stone. The veins in the walls glowed faintly with iron-laced ore. In some places, long-cooled magma had scorched the rock crimson. When his torch flickered across them, the reflections danced like flame on still water. He moved carefully. The main halls of Khazad-dûm were far below. These side passages had once served as ore routes and emergency paths. They were safer now than the deeper roads, but not by much. Goblins still roamed here, or worse. He passed empty storerooms, fallen carts, cracked supports. The silence was absolute, but not empty. He could feel the weight of the stone above, the breath of the past. These halls had not been abandoned. They had been buried. At a turn near a collapsed stairwell, he paused. A symbol was carved on the wall. 3 overlapping axes, the sign of a broker's path. His breath slowed. Mirkwood had been here. He followed the symbol deeper, past a collapsed forge room where blackened hammers lay in ash, through a tunnel that curved unnaturally, like something had twisted it in heat. Finally, he found the vault, not locked, not sealed, simply left behind. Inside, torches sat unlit in iron sconces. The dust had been swept, but poorly. Tracks remained. Deep boot prints. Large. Heavier than a dwarf. And beside them, smaller ones. Sharp-toed. Goblin feet. Kundrîn's fingers tightened around his staff. He found the trade altar in the back of the chamber, a stone table carved with ancient trade script, coins scattered across it, tokens of old tribes, dwarf, orc. Men on the far wall scratched hastily into soot a single name. Kundrîn stepped closer. The runes on his arms pulsed. He touched the wall. Pain flashed through him, sharp and sudden. His knees buckled. A vision gripped him. He saw the chamber again, but alive, lit by torchlight. A figure stood at the altar, tall, thick-armed, wrapped in black leather and fur, his face scarred, eyes pale green. Mirkwood. He held the hammer, wrapped in black cloth, marked with red wax. Baragzûn knelt before him, shaking, blood on his beard, coins in his hand. He offered more than payment. He he offered something darker, a name, a trade of shame. The hammer was taken, and Masruk left through a tunnel marked with a sunburst sigil. The vision ended. Kundrîn gasped and fell against the altar, though any torchlight trembled. The hammer had passed through here, and now it traveled with Masruk. To where, he did not know, but the trail was clear again. He gathered what he could: scraps of parchment, a half-burned map, a vial of soot-smelling black oil used to preserve cursed relics, and a single iron token stamped with a rising sun. He knew that symbol: Tharbad, the river city far west of the mountains, half-drowned, lawless, home to those who traded in the things dwarves pretended never existed. Masruk had gone there to sell or to hide. Kundrîn stood and looked once more at the altar. He did not speak, but the fire beneath his skin warmed, not from pain, from purpose. He left the chamber without looking back. Behind him, the red tunnels settled once more into silence, and the halls of Moria waited for no one. The river stank long before he reached it. Tharbad had once been a city. Long ago, when the kings of Arnor still walked in mail, and the bridges were held by soldiers instead of scavengers. Now it was half submerged, half forgotten. A place where the dead never bothered to rise, and the living learned to live beneath the rot. Kundrîn reached its outskirts on the 9th evening since leaving Khazad-dûm. The marshes that choked the southern approach swallowed boot and stone alike. Broken roads led nowhere. Fallen towers leaned into the water like tired men. Torchlight flickered along the causeways, but no one greeted him. No gates, no guards, just watchers, eyes behind slats, shadows moving too carefully to be drunk. He passed beneath a crumbled arch where the river trickled through an old canal. The smell was of iron and oil and damp rot. He asked no questions. Not at first. The token from Moria was in his hand, thumb tracing the raised sun symbol. He showed it to no one, but someone saw it. A beggar on a stairwell nodded once and vanished. A girl selling fire fruit stepped out of the way without speaking. A one-eyed man leaning on a spear muttered something in Orcish and pointed toward the drowned square. They knew what he carried and who he wanted. Masruk. The old chapel stood on the far side of a collapsed aqueduct. Its roof was half gone. Vines choked the front steps. A tree grew through the center of its dome, as if it had broken free from the stone just to flee. A torch burned near the doorway. Kundrîn stepped inside. The heat hit first, not from fire, from presence. The air felt heavy, oily. His skin crawled, and the runes beneath his wrappings pulsed slow and deep. He moved through the nave, past cracked benches and broken pews. At the altar stood a figure, broad-shouldered, half-turned, wrapped in black leathers and mail, fur at the collar, One tusk peeked from his lower lip. His left eye gleamed pale green. Mazruk, the broker, a figure turned and smiled. "You've come far, dwarf." Kundrîn did not smile. The hammer. "You have it." Mazruk chuckled. "Direct. I like that." He stepped down from the altar, boots thudding on cracked stone. Baragzûn said someone might come. Said he saw it in the flames. I thought he was mad. But here you are. You traded him the hammer. Mazruk nodded. For a price, and now it seems it wants to go home. Kundrîn stepped forward. "I'll take it. You'll earn it." Mazruk's voice darkened. "The hammer is not coin, dwarf. It's marked now. It's tied to every deal it's touched. You think you carry a burden. You don't know what burden is. I carry the curse of Thrain. Then you know pain, but you don't know price." Mazruk walked back to the altar. The hammer lay there, wrapped in cloth, bound in red wax, exactly as Kundrîn had seen in vision. He stepped forward. Mazruk raised a hand. "Wait." Kundrîn froze. "One thing first. One favor." Kundrîn narrowed his eyes. "What favor?" "There's a warlord in the north. An Uruk. Took something from me. Something small. Sharp. Dangerous. I want it back." "Why me?" "You burn, dwarf. You carry fire. The kind that frightens things even orcs won't name. He won't expect you, and you have no one left to bury you." Kundrîn stepped forward again. "And when it's done, the hammer is yours." Mazruk placed a scroll on the altar, map, marked. "One shot. No lies." Kundrîn reached for it and paused. "If you betray me..." Mazruk smiled. "I don't deal in betrayal. Only wait." Kundrîn took the scroll. He turned, but not before saying one more thing. "This hammer isn't cursed. It's haunted." Mazruk's smile faded. "All good things are." That night, Kundrîn camped near the river's edge, fire low, cloak damp with mist. The map was simple. North, into the Fordwaith, a ruin known only by smoke and silence. He stared at the wrapped rune fragment he still carried, the one from Baragzûn's corpse. It was warm, alive. The hammer was near. But to hold it again, he would have to bleed once more. And this time, not in stone, but in snow. The Fordwaith was not a place meant for walking. Even the wind seemed lost here, tearing sideways across plains of shattered ice and stone. Nothing grew. Nothing rested. The sun never rose higher than a distant blur. The cold crawled into the sheaves, bones, and built its home there. Kundrîn trudged north with the warlord's map tight in hand, and his cloak stiff with frost. Every step was slower than the last. The curse had grown loud again. Not in fire, but in presence. The runes burned under, His wrappings, his thoughts came in bursts, scattered like cinders on snow. He stopped speaking aloud 3 days in. The wind never listened anyway. He found the ruin on the 6th morning. It jutted from the white like the ribs of a long-dead beast. Half-buried stone towers, black banners frozen stiff on broken poles. A cracked wall stretched around a hollow yard where fire once burned and war was once made. Mirkwood's map called it Khazad-dûm, the fortress of the warlord Urlog Bonebrand. Kundrîn crouched at the edge of the outer ridge and studied the yard, movement below. Not many. A handful of orcs, a few uruks, all wrapped in pelts and iron. No campfires. They didn't need warmth, only orders. He watched until night. Then he moved. The outer wall had collapsed on the western side. He climbed over cracked stones and ducked under frozen beams. His boots made no sound. The wind howled just enough to cover him. He slipped through the old forge yard, past rusted anvils and shattered shields, into a lower hallway half buried in drifted snow. The relic chamber was marked on the map, deep within the keep. A vault. He followed the signs. Crude war paint in black tar, skulls lashed to iron spikes. He passed a sleeping morgue. Its chest rose slow, steam rising from its jaws. He did not breathe until it stilled. He found the vault beneath the crooked stair. 2 guards stood there. One uruk, one man twisted by cold and coin. Kundrîn didn't wait. He stepped from shadow and raised his staff. The runes blazed, light exploded from his skin. The uruk cried out, blinded. The man reached for his blade, too slow. Kundrîn struck with speed, born of fire. Staff against skull, elbow to throat. They fell. He stepped over them. The vault door was marked with an old symbol, a rising sun. Mirkwood's crest. He opened it. Inside, the room glowed faintly with mage fire trapped in glass. Shelves lined with wrapped objects. Bones, blades, scrolls, and on the central table, a small iron box. He opened it. Inside sat a jagged silver shard, no longer than a finger. He knew it instantly, a keystone used in sealing magic. Dangerous alone, deadly in the right hands. He reached for it, and the door slammed behind him. He turned. Urlog stood there, 7 feet of muscle and hate. His eyes were pale gray, one clouded with old burn. His armor was pieced from dwarven plate, blackened and reshaped. He grinned. Mirkwood sends rats now. Kundrîn didn't answer. The uruk stepped into the room. You want this? You fight. He dropped his axe to the ground. No weapons, no tricks. Kundrîn dropped his staff. They closed the distance in 3 heartbeats. The first blow was a hammer, not a fist. It knocked Kundrîn sideways into a shelf. Bones clattered around him. He rolled, came up swinging. His fist caught Urlog across the jaw. It was like punching stone. The Uruk laughed and grabbed him by the beard. Kundrîn struck low, a knee to the thigh, an elbow to the ribs. The Uruk staggered. Kundrîn pressed forward. The runes burned. His skin began to glow. Arlog saw it too late. Kundrîn's palm caught him in the chest. The rune flame surged. Not a spell, not fire. A blast. Arlog flew back into the wall. The vault shook. Kundrîn fell to his knees. The cost was too much. He couldn't breathe. He crawled to the keystone and took it. The runes on his arms dimmed. Faint, the fire inside him flickered, but the relic was his. He rose, staggered, and walked out of the ruin before the orcs knew what had happened. He did not stop for 2 days. He moved by instinct through snow and pain and silence. He reached the edge of the wastes and collapsed beside a half-frozen spring. The keystone was still in his hand. His beard was stiff with blood. He slept, and the fire dreamed. Kundrîn stood at the foot of Erebor. The mountain loomed in the distance, its great stone walls lit by the dying light of the day. Snow blew across the wide plains at its base, but it was not the cold that stung the most. It was the weight of what lay ahead, the last steps of his long road. The hammer was in his pack, wrapped in cloth, tied with a simple rope. It was as heavy now as it had been the day he first saw it. Not from its weight in metal, but from the curse. The fire beneath his skin had dimmed since the battle with Arlog. His body still ached, bruised and battered. The burn of the runes still throbbed along his arms, but it was a muted fire now, not the inferno it had once been. He walked toward the mountain's gates. The guards outside the entrance were few. They were suspicious, of course, but not many dared question the lone dwarf who stood before them, worn and weary, yet carrying a purpose that was plain to see. The gates opened before him, not for his honor, not for his name, but for the weight of the relic in his pack. Kundrîn stepped through the great doors into Erebor. The Hall of Kings was quieter than he remembered. The great pillars still stood, carved with the same ancient runes, the same symbols of Durin's line. The Arkenstone sat high in its place, but it gleamed dimly now, as if the mountain itself had fallen into slumber. Kundrîn made his way to the throne room. His footsteps echoed through the vast hall, each one a reminder of the days when he had walked this path with pride, when he had been one of the mountain's finest. Now he was nothing more than a shadow of his former self, a dwarf who had broken his oath and betrayed his own kin, and yet the fire still burned. The throne room was empty when he entered. The golden throne stood at the far end, flanked by tall columns and great banners. King Thrain III sat in his place, his face grim. flame of his beard shimmered faintly in the torchlight. Kundrîn approached the throne, every step slow, measured. He did not speak. Thrain's gaze was unwavering. He said nothing at first, only watching him with eyes sharp as stone. Then, at last, he spoke. "You return." Kundrîn nodded, feeling the weight of those words like the weight of a mountain pressing down on his chest. His voice was low, rough from the journey. "I have returned the hammer." Thrain looked down at the bundle in Kundrîn's hands, then back up at the dwarf before him. His eyes softened ever so slightly. The coldness in his voice remained, but there was something else there now. Something not quite pity, but something akin to it. "Give it to me," Thrain said. Kundrîn held the bundle out. Thrain took the hammer carefully. The moment his fingers touched it, a flicker of light danced across the stone floor, as if the mountain itself had breathed a sigh of relief. The curse on Kundrîn's skin flared once more, but not in pain. The fire dimmed, its grip loosening as the weight of the relic was no longer his to bear. Thrain turned the hammer in his hands, inspecting it. The ancient runes glowed faintly, their power still strong. The same power that had once forged the halls of Erebor, the same power that had brought ruin. "You did it," Thrain muttered, more to himself than to Kundrîn. He looked at the hammer, then back at the dwarf. "But it cost you." Kundrîn nodded. "It cost me everything." Thrain's gaze softened just for a moment. He set the hammer down gently on the stone table beside him, its heavy weight resounding like the sound of a bell tolling the end of an era. "You've broken the curse," Thrain said quietly, "but the cost is not for me to forgive." Kundrîn said nothing. "You've returned it," Thrain continued, "but your place here is not restored. You were exiled for a reason." Kundrîn's heart sank. He had known this would be the price. No glory awaited him. No song would be sung in his honor. He was a thief, a betrayer, and a broken dwarf. He had come back only to undo the damage he had done, to end the curse, not for his own redemption, but for the mountain. Thrain stood, moving toward the hammer. He placed a hand on its handle and nodded slowly, as if acknowledging something unseen. "You have done what was needed, but this is not my kingdom to offer forgiveness." Kundrîn stood there, feeling the weight of those words sink into his bones. He had come expecting nothing. He had come seeking only one thing, a release from the curse, and in that he had found it. The silence stretched between them for a long moment before Thrain finally spoke again. "Go, live, walk in the shadows, but live." Kundrîn bowed his head, feeling the sting of shame mix with the relief that flooded his chest. He turned and walked away, leaving the throne room behind. He did not look back. The hammer was no longer his burden. It was Erebor's, and he had done what he could to restore it. He walked out of the mountain, down the long hallways that had once felt like home. The cold air of the outside world greeted him like an old friend. He stepped into the snow, the wind howling around him. He would not return. Not as a hero, not as a smith, not as the dwarf who had once been a part of the mountain's glory, but he had returned the hammer, and that was enough. The wind outside Erebor blew colder than before, though the sky had cleared and the stars shimmered with quiet brilliance. Kundrîn sat alone on a stone shelf overlooking the plains. The mountain was behind him, its gates closed. The hammer was where it belonged. The curse was gone, and still he felt hollow, not from pain, from quiet. For so long, the flame had been a weight, a voice whispering beneath his skin, a rhythm in his blood. Now it was still. The runes along his arms were faint scars, pale against the rough skin. They no longer glowed, no longer burned. He looked down at his hands. They trembled, but not from weakness. They trembled from stillness. His body had not known peace in months, his mind even longer. He breathed in, held it, let it go. There was no audience, no reward, no gold, only air and earth. He stood and walked, not toward the roads of men, not back to the trading towns or the iron hills, but toward the high paths that wound into the hills east of Erebor, a shepherd's path, a hidden way. He followed it until the torches and towers were gone, until the mountain was only a shape behind him, until the world stretched out wide and quiet. He found a hollow beneath an old pine tree, a place half sheltered where moss softened the stone and the wind slowed to a whisper. He gathered sticks, kindled a fire. The flame was small, but it was his. He unwrapped the last of his memories, a pouch of soil from his home vault, a scrap of leather from his father's forge gloves, a ring from the forge crest he had once worn with pride. He set them near the fire, not to burn them, to remember them. He spoke aloud, though no one listened. My name is Kundrîn Stoneveil. I was cast out for stealing what should not have been touched. I returned it, and now I carry nothing. The fire cracked softly. He reached into his satchel. There, wrapped in cloth, was the last fragment of the rune flame, the piece he had taken from Baragzûn's corpse in Dol Guldur. It still glowed faintly. A soft ember, he held it in his palm and whispered, "You are wrong, but you tried." He placed it into the fire. It did not hiss, did not flare. It simply sank into the coals and vanished. Kundrîn lay back and looked at the stars. He did not count them, did not name them. He simply watched them. Somewhere far away in the depths of Erebor, the hammer lay in its place. The stone around it cooled. The curse was gone. The mountain no longer whispered his name, and that, he thought, was as it should be. In time, the wind picked up again, the fire dimmed. Kundrîn slept. No visions, no flames, only silence. And so ends the tale of Kundrîn Stoneveil. No statue was carved in his likeness. No song sung in the deep halls. But the fire is gone, the burden lifted, and the hammer sleeps once more. If you walk the high paths near Erebor, you may find a hollow beneath the pines, and if you sit there long enough, you may hear a breath on the wind, or feel the warmth of a fire once lit by hands that finally let go. Sleep well, traveler. The mountain is quiet now. The curse is broken.